Putin had always promised his people order, but instead, in one coordinated night, his regime lost control of both the skies and the servers. On July 28th, 74 Ukrainian drones struck Russian territory across 5 different regions. The attacks hit St. Petersburg, Smolensk, Kaluga, Bryansk, Rostov, and they exposed massive gaps in Russian air defense. But then the real collapse, it came a little bit later, and it came online because that same day, Aeroflot, the flagship carrier of the Russian Federation, was digitally crippled. Hackers from the Belarusian cyber partisans and the Ukraine aligned Silent Crow claimed responsibility. They announced that they had been on the servers of Aeroflot for over a year. And the result of that was, in fact, catastrophic. 7,000 servers destroyed, according to Aeroflot. 12 terabytes of confidential data were exfiltrated. And this includes things like flight logs, the internal memos, the executive communications, and all of the passenger records. Now, according to Reuters, Aeroflot was forced to cancel over 100 flights. Most of them were to domestic routes, but others went to Armenia and Belarus. Now, travelers immediately flooded social media with their complaints that the app is frozen, the website is down, and now even their own call center is unreachable. But what can they do? This was not just some sort of a ransomware attack. The attackers did not want money. The attackers wanted operational paralysis. And in that, the attackers succeeded. Aeroflot's national flight network, passenger infrastructure, its digital backbone were simply obliterated. But then came the next strike, even deeper, and against the Russian state itself. Because hours after the Aeroflot collapse, the primary centralized government portal for all the citizens' needs, be it the pensions, the tax records, the medical data, the digital signatures, it also crashed. It left millions of people without access to any state document, any services, or any means to even identify themselves. And what did the Kremlin do? Did it respond? No. The Kremlin offered no statement. It offered no timeline for restoration, and it offered no public explanation. Officials blamed this all on technical issues, but then they said nothing else. But guess what then happened? Zhukovsky Airport, its digital system also failed. No warning, no details, no accountability. So in less than 24 hours, Russia suffered synchronized digital collapse. At the same time, it was receiving drone strikes, and its national airline melted down. This is just a total failure of the state to be able to maintain its airspace and the cyberspace within its own country. And right now, Russian citizens, they say that their taxes are frozen. They can't do anything about it. They can't access their medical records. They cannot even renew their passports or their IDs. The government system remains offline. So the first rule in any crisis is that you should control the narrative. Get out ahead of the story. But we see that the Kremlin is not doing that. They're doing quite the opposite. They are saying nothing. And when you're the government and your country's been attacked and you say nothing, you know what that does? It breeds panic. Because at this point, it's very clear to everybody. The Russian leadership simply does not know who hit them. They don't know how deep these attacks really went. And they really have absolutely no idea when, if they will be able to restore control. So this was not just a cyber attack. It was, in fact, the visible breakdown of digital sovereignty. And the very agency tasked with preventing this, the FSB, where was it? Is it now coming to a solution? Has it interpreted exactly what went on and how to protect Russia in the future? No, it hasn't. Because actually, what's happening inside the FSB is even more interesting. So, Directorate T, which is responsible for the digital infrastructure as well as transportation systems, it says, according to insiders, what's been leaked on Russian Telegram, it's been described as having chaos and paralysis, as nobody's really sure what they should do now. They realize it's a very big problem, but they have absolutely no idea how to get out of this very big problem. And you know what the best part is? And the best part is, it's about to get a lot worse. because there's something big, very big, about to happen. My name is Jason Smart. I'm a special correspondent for the Kiev Post. In addition to that, I have spent 20 years studying the Putin regime and actively working against it. Hence why I was thrown out of Russia and blackballed for life back in 2010. But what we're seeing right now in Russia truly is a breakdown of their systems. And the confusion, I think, is probably one of the most interesting elements of this. To see that the government just doesn't know what to do. It doesn't know how to respond. And even if it had a good idea of how to respond, the corruption that is so deep within the Russian government doesn't allow them to make any sort of serious changes. They just repeat the same mistakes again and again. And the Russian people see this. So let's dig into exactly what's been going on here and why it's so very clear for many Russians that their state is lost. Their leadership has no idea what to do. And why many people now in social medias in Russia are starting to believe that perhaps our government has lost control. Just one thing before we dig in that. Please help me get this message of what's happening here in Kiev, Ukraine, where I am, and what's really happening in Russia without the propaganda, but the truth to more people. Please like this video. Please subscribe to the channel and consider becoming a channel member today. And just one last thing. Thank you all who have contributed to drones. I sincerely appreciate it, as do the men who are currently fighting in Sumy. They're in intense fighting every single day, and the drones that we're sending help save lives. And behind me, you see a flag, as you see patches on my other shoulder from the troops who we've helped so far. And in the coming days, I think we'll have something very exciting from them to share with you. So let's dig into exactly what happened. So, how did the Aeroflot disaster unfold? How'd that even happen? Well, it's important to understand that, typical of Russia, Aeroflot's cybersecurity team, it was made up of a bunch of political appointees and retirees who were there just to get an easy paycheck. And that's why just the initial analysis shows that even basic things, the antivirus software, it was expired. The passwords, they had not been changed in many years, long before even the war started. How about the log files? They were also years out of date. The breach reportedly went undetected for months. Staff only responded after servers were actively being deleted. They were sitting there, and all of a sudden they couldn't understand, why is everything just disappearing? Why can't I access the files? And then it dawned on them, perhaps we are being hacked. And the best part, they called them their very top people, the top cybersecurity people in Russia from the FSB, to ask, what should we do? How can we get the hackers out? How do we stop this attack? And you know what the best suggestion they had? The one that they ultimately took? They said just physically cut the power to Aeroflot's headquarters. That's how you can stop the hemorrhaging. They had no other idea of what could be done to stop the attacks. Now imagine your top security agency's best idea is just pull the plug and start praying that the data loss will stop. And this is not just a blip. It mirrors what we've seen before in Russia, that when something actually important happens, nobody knows what to actually do. So remember back in 2022, when the Kerch Bridge had its explosion, that triggered eventually mass purges and reshuffling across Russian ministries. But it did something else. It created more tension between the Russian military and the Russian FSB. And at this state, that tension is getting hotter and hotter because each side is blaming the other side for what's going wrong. But in fact, it's the inherent corruption within both organizations that makes it simply impossible for them to effectively do their jobs. And that's why today, though the FSB was once feared as omnipotent and that it was somehow able to get past any struggle and to win, nobody says that. They don't think of them as winners. What they think of them as being just lost, they're being corrupt. And we see that they're blind, they're brittle, and they're simply bypassed by the Ukrainians. But Ukraine's message in this is unmistakable. This was not just the climax. This was not Operation Spiderweb. This was only the opening move. Because the next attacks, they're already loaded and they're about to happen. In fact, the hackers communicated that they'd already set traps and the government will not have time to fix them. But in the imminent future, a lot of information is about to come out from the Russian government itself, as well as from the defense contractors. And the hackers went on to say that they had actually breached RT Solar. RT Solar is the Kremlin's cybersecurity contractor. It's the one that is supposed to be protecting Rosatom, which is the atomic agency, Kalashnikov, which makes the weapons, and a lot of the other defense critical institutions. The hacker said that it's going to be coming out in the next few days. And this is all part of something bigger, which is not sabotage, not just vandalism. It's a systematic attrition, a strategy of engineered collapse designed to drain Russia's strength from within. Every attack just pulls manpower from the front lines, and thus the Kremlin must redirect forces to domestic crisis management. Similarly, why these drone strikes are so very important. Because these drone strikes inside of Russia are forcing the Russians to pull their air defense off the front lines and to bring it into Russia, to protect facilities within Russia. In the last few days, there's been some very serious drone strikes. We just saw in Sochi a few days ago, Vladimir Putin was within 2 kilometers of where Ukrainian drones struck. The next day, he flew to the far, far north of Russia to Arkhangelsk. And then he was in St. Petersburg for Navy Day on Sunday. And guess what happened there? They had to cancel all the events because of the threat of drone strikes. This is having an actual impact on Russia. This is actually disabling command centers. It's eroding the public confidence, and ultimately it's just fracturing the digital control that Russia has of their own country. Russia is such a tyrannical state that next year they're introducing the e-ruble, which allows the government to not just print money, but to have electronic money with absolutely no value. And they'll pay the pensions only in that. But there's a secondary aspect of this. The point of the e-ruble is for the government to be able to know exactly what you're buying, from whom you're buying, and if they need to cut off your wallet to prevent you from doing transactions. That gives them one more layer to be able to control their population. So, what's really important though about this next attack, this next big one that's about to come out, the RT Solar, is this. RT Solar is also in charge of things like the national power grid, which means that if Ukraine has effectively been able to bypass Russia's security, it could very well go after even larger parts of the Russian government, even more of its structure and its logistics, even more of its fundamental infrastructure that allows it to operate as a state. Because what we're witnessing right now is Ukraine's new counteroffensive, not in the trenches, but with the terminals. The Russians would love to have a war that is just them invading Ukraine and attritionally just grinding down the Ukrainians. But then the Ukrainians refuse. The battlefield is not going to be any longer in Kherson or Zaporizhia. It's going to be within Moscow. It's going to be within the portals. It's going to be within the flight control towers. It's going to be ultimately in the psyche of the Russian state and the Russian people. Because where fear and not control dominates is where people start to make more irrational decisions. That's exactly when the state starts to lose control and starts to act erratically and make bad decisions. Ukraine is winning a war that Putin, quite literally, cannot even see. And that's why every day, despite, yes, Ukraine also has its struggles in this war, Russia is not having a good time. Things are getting worse by the day for Vladimir Putin. Thank you for watching. Please like and please subscribe. And as always, thank you for supporting Ukraine.